All right, ladies and gentlemen. So today what we're going to do is we're going to discuss introduction paragraphs. So in our last screencast, we kind of got introduced to the thesis statement, which is by far the most important part of the introduction paragraph. But today we're going to kind of get an idea of how to write the rest of the intro. So just kind of take my tips and keep them in mind because it may be a little bit different than you've been taught in the past. Even if you've had, an AP Global teacher, I might be looking for different things, and I might want you to do a little bit different things, when you write your introduction paragraphs. So the first thing we discussed last time, so we're just going to go through it briefly, is you have to understand the prompt. So this is key for the entire essay. So please do not rush it. When you get an essay prompt, make sure you read it and you read it carefully. So we're going to use the same sample that I used for my sample thesis in the last screencast. Evaluate the causes and consequences of the abolishment of the encomienda system in the Spanish colonies. So again, just make sure to sit there and don't rush. Make sure you know exactly what the question is asking you. All right, so when we look at our introductions, there's really going to be three big things that we want to remember when we're writing our introductions. So the first one, I'm going to call it painting the historical background. And really what this is doing is kind of two things. One, you're setting a time and place for when these events happened in history. And the second thing that you're doing is you're providing historical events leading up to the question. So I think this is a kind of a key thing that a lot of students don't do and they're afraid to do when they write their essays. The introduction, what I've noticed about students in the past is a lot of people write very vague introductions and they really leave themselves nowhere to go. So they start with their first sentence with the question itself. And what you want to remember in history, the best way to kind of start your essay is to start slightly before the question. And what I mean by that is to kind of start with the time period a little bit before what the question is asking to kind of lead you into the question. Okay? So I think the best way to get a look at this is to look at a sample introduction. So I'm going to show you guys a sample introduction, and what I want you guys to do is to kind of just, when we go to our next slide, just pause it for yourselves so that you can read it. Take a couple minutes to read it and kind of see how you kind of paint the historical background. Okay? So why don't you pause the video now, and then we'll come back and kind of take a look at it and analyze it a little bit as a group. All right, so at this point, hopefully you paused the video and you took a look at the introduction. So what I want you guys to notice about it, so our question is asking about the abolishment of the encomienda system. But what I want you to notice is kind of how I start my essay. So I don't start talking about the encomienda system, because if you do, it leaves you nowhere to go with your essay. And you have to kind of like set it up. So when you're thinking, like, if the question's about getting rid of the encomienda system, your introduction should be a little bit about where did it come from in the first place? Why was it set up? Who set it up? How did it start? So I decided to start my essay kind of with intentions of the explorers, right? So Christopher Columbus, he's trying to go to the East Indies. He comes to the New World, and the Spanish are really looking for gold and they're looking for resources. They're looking to make money, which is kind of a reason for why the encomienda system starts, right? And they start growing these different cash crops within the society, and they use the indigenous people, which are the natives, for their labor source. And I kind of give a more background about where the encomienda system came from. It's coming from European feudalism, and you know it starts to be criticized pretty quickly. And then here's my thesis, the same thesis I used as my sample before, and it kind of fits and it flows into your paragraph. So just kind of keep those things in mind. Now, the one thing I want you guys to notice, there are some real facts here. There's some real information here in the introduction paragraph. Don't be afraid to put real details, to put real facts. People are good, terms are good, explanations and details and facts are good throughout the entire essay. So the introduction is not kind of just like vague general statements. It's painting a real background for the question of what led up to whatever the question is focusing on. In this case, the abolishment of the encomienda system. Okay? So that I think is very important for you guys to understand. All right. Next big thing is the thesis statement. So hopefully you noticed where the thesis statement was. For us, we've already talked about this, like how to write a thesis, what goes in it, and answering the what and why component of, you know, writing a thesis. But important things, it should be the very last sentence in your introduction paragraph. And it should be clear to me. Like I should know, like, okay, this is the person's thesis. It should be clear. So you want to make your stance and your argument clear, just like we talked about in the last screencast. So if you made some mistakes and I had some advice for you, just kind of tune it up, fix it up, and kind of put it into your introduction paragraph when you write your sample introduction. Last piece of information, again, is going to be don't be afraid to provide details. So that goes for the introduction when you're painting the historical background of it, but it also goes for the body paragraphs, okay? So we're going to talk about that over the weekend, but the body paragraphs have to be chock full of details and facts that support your argument. Again, I want to emphasize, remember, it's argumentative writing. So good argumentative writing, your thesis is your position, it's your stance, and you have major arguments that support your thesis, but you have to have tons of facts and details and information to kind of back up your point. Think of it kind of like a person who has a very strong opinion, but they have nothing to support it. They have no details to support it. So just kind of keep that in mind when you're writing. So you're going to use the same sample that you wrote your thesis statements for over the weekend. So I'll repost it on Edmodo for you guys. Use the same sample and try and write a nice, solid introduction paragraph. All right, I'll see you guys back in school on Friday.